Imagine if Middlebury police, every infraction you committed, they stopped you, they fined you, they put you in jail for not paying that fine. How long would Middlebury students tolerate that for? They wouldn't. But that's exactly what happened in Ferguson, because it could happen in Ferguson. So that's what I think is important, is that you guys wouldn't tolerate it for a second. And you actually have the power here. There have been a series of crises that have become sort of a visible representation of this process that's called mass incarceration, which is really sort of a 30-year process, although the seeds of it have been planted really since the beginning of this country's history.
To me, the carceral state means that power and control is maintained through incarceration and through laws and policies that discriminate unequally against certain bodies.
Our system of punishment will punish whoever it can. I mean, it's a system that needs to survive. And one of the important trends over the past 30 years has been the rise of the power of the prosecution, increasing use of prison as a punishment, a sort of attendant rise in the power of the police.
What mass incarceration does is it takes unruly bodies and it disappears them from the system over and over and over again, so that entire communities are left unable to in any way find a way to fend for themselves and to fight back against systems that would destroy them.
We have the largest number of people incarcerated of any country. We have the largest number of people monitored through alternatives to incarceration called probation, parole, community sanctions. And so the system of punishment is really expansive, and the logic has started to infuse other institutions such as schools, colleges, other places that are sort of, we sometimes think as institutionally or administratively separate.
I think the sort of protection that a college campus like Middlebury can provide allows us to believe that things aren't that bad. And it's probably worth thinking about why police aren't arresting Middlebury students, but they might be in poorer areas of Addison County arresting people for illegal drug use, or arresting some of the staff or children of staff or cousins of staff who work here. And how it is that wealth and race together can really protect people from the consequences of the carceral state.
It redefines unruliness to govern the people it wants to govern. So certainly Middlebury students getting drunk on a weekend, we don't call them unruly bodies, but they would be, if they were a different population, would be treated as unruly by the criminal justice system.
It's not as if everyone here is immune to that, although a large number of people here, because Middlebury students are whiter and wealthier than the average population, a large number of people here probably haven't felt it at a personal level. That doesn't mean that we're not morally responsible for paying attention to it.
So when Middlebury students say these issues don't affect us here in Vermont, that's not true. And so I think one thing is sort of understanding the context of this college.
I think we have reached a point in U.S. culture and society where it is impossible to ignore the mass incarceration of African Americans and Latinos. We are at a point in history where looking at what's gone on for the past 30 years is somewhat like looking at Selma. It is a point where a moral stand has to be made, and we have to start paying attention to what has happened in terms of the mass incarceration of such large numbers, historically larger numbers of people in prison than anywhere in the world at any time, including Soviet Russia. A feminist analysis provides an intersectional response that includes the complicated ways in which race and gender and history and sexuality all get wrapped up in each other, so that Michael Brown is dangerous or Trayvon Martin is a threat.
To me, I mean, what's a feminist response? I think it's a critical response. I think it's one that interrogates the kind of terms that maybe many of us are comfortable with. I think it's a response that sort of pushes against a liberal impulse for reform. I think it asks questions about how identities get constructed through the system, and sort of pushes us to think about the categories that make that have made mass incarceration really acceptable to us, because the thing is, it's happened under our watch, all of us.